G'day Grumpies, welcome to Grumpy Old Bloke, the vinyl collection. Happy New Year, I guess, to all of you. Happy 2022. It's got better than the last couple of years, let's be honest. Yeah, well, hope your Christmas was good, Festivus, Saturnalia, whatever it is you celebrate. That's out of the way. The most important thing is the cricket is still on. We've got one more test to go, even though England are really not looking that flash at the moment. Australia are giving them a damn good hiding. But you don't tune into this channel for the cricket report, I am sure. Today we are covering off David Bowie, which is still technically in the B section of my record collection. Now, the timing of this is quite interesting because at the time of recording, this is January 2022, we've just had the David Bowie's birthday day just go past, and of course we're only a few days away from the anniversary of his death in 2016, so the timing wasn't deliberate but nonetheless fortuitous, I would say. Well, not that his death was fortuitous, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, I know where I'm going with that. Now today we're going to review the box set 5 Years by David Bowie. Well, actually it wasn't by David Bowie, but you know what I'm saying. I'm really wittering on today. Obviously I'm out of practice. This album covers 4 years of David Bowie's career, 1969 to 1973. I know, do the maths, it's strange. Anyway, the box set is called 5 Years. The first album in this is not actually David Bowie's first album. The David Bowie's first album technically should have been recorded under the name David Jones, to be honest with you, was on the DRAM label. It's called David Bowie. For those of you in the know, it was actually released on whatever day it was in 1967, exactly the same day as Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was released, and that's probably why it's been overlooked, to be honest with you. That and the fact it's a terrible album. Hey, my channel, I'm entitled to my opinions. So the fact that it's not in this box set, I actually don't think it's a huge setback, because really we're not going to miss it. So I'm going to go through the box set with you today, just share some thoughts on various albums, various contents thereof with you, and of course I invite your comments and feedback, because let's be honest, I don't get very much. So let's kick off with David Bowie, 5 Years of the box set. The first album out of the box set was the rather imaginatively titled David Bowie. Now this is not to be confused with his other album called David Bowie. This one came out in November 1969. This was the first album that, many people refer to this album as Space Oddity, because it contains the single Space Oddity. Now, interestingly enough, or interesting, not even remotely interesting enough, Space Odyssey was one of the singles I actually bought many years ago when I was a young lad. So in 1969 I would have been not very old, and I bought the single Space Oddity. I'm one of those strange kids that used to save my money and buy singles when I was a kid. I didn't buy sweets, and even though looking at me now, I didn't buy sweets and silly bits of plastic. Even in those days, music was my thing, and that's why I've got quite a few singles from back in that period. But that's an aside. This album came out in, as I say, November 1969, produced by Tony Visconti. Visconti? It's Visconti, isn't it? I never remember his name. I'm going to say Visconti. I'm going to go with that. This particular presentation is a gatefold presentation. It's really lovely. It's really beautifully textured feel to this album. Sorry, there's your back cover. And the album itself is on, I think it's actually on EMI, but I could be wrong. Gemma Phillips, there you go, EMI, it's an EMI group from memory. There we are. Sorry, I'm a little bit off pack today because it's my first day back, so you know I'm not really 100% with it yet, but I'm sure I'll pick it up as I go along. As I said, the album itself is not a classic. The box set very much tracks, as I said, the first 5, let's not be pedantic, years of David Bowie's career. So this is really David Bowie's rise and finding his own feet and sort of his style of music, whatever that, if you could ever define that in a single word. However, this really is the rise of David Bowie and the glam years. So many would say that was his peak years, but certainly his first major phase. So David Bowie's first album, Not a huge fan. I mean, there's some okay tracks on it. I don't think I've got a track list I can show you per se. But what's on here? Anything that you would know? Not particularly. No, there's nothing on here that particularly stands out. I mean, Space Oddity is the obvious one. But other than that, it's, some songs. Now, I know that's going to wind some people up. Don't care. Right. The next one in the collection, turning my back on you so you can see my bald spot. Yes, I have a bald spot. It's called my head. The Man Who Sold the World. David Bowie's third album. Beautiful dress. Again, this is not a fantastic album. I think this album was more of the promise of things to come. Looking back on it retrospectively, you can see the signs and a few tracks and a few way he plays with stuff in the studio, and his writing style's beginning to develop. So you can think, looking back, you can say, yeah, okay, I can see where that came from. At the time, not a hugely successful album, but certainly not a bad album by any sense. Back cover there. Track listing, I don't know that you'd be able to see it. I'll try and put it up. Oh yes, you can. There you go. I'll put it up close. There we are. So The Man Who Sold the World obviously is the track that everybody knows on there. There's nothing else really that screams must-have album. Again, for the completist, of course you've got to have this album. Let me just try and pull it out for you, missus. And what have we got? God, it's fighting back today. Again, on the same same label as I think just about everything that's in this box set. Now, you could argue that if you really wanted the peak Bowie period from this, there's probably 3 albums that are all in this box set that you would buy. We'll go through that. But again, this is the completest in me. Now, I hadn't collected David Bowie until, well, much later in life. That here. The reason I didn't collect Bowie is because I bought Space Oddity when it came out as a single, and I was around and listening to music actively when these albums came out, and it never really grabbed me. It never really did it for me. And post that, really the only David Bowie I heard was, of course, whatever was on the radio. And growing up in that period, then, believe it or not, we didn't have things like Tidal and Spotify or streaming or even the CDs in those days. So Bowie really never became an artist that I was particularly drawn to. I always respected him. I always sort of liked what he was, well, not always, but most of the time I liked what he was doing. But it wasn't really my scene, baby, as people like to say. However, respected David enormously, and certainly the influence he had on many other musicians, both at the time and since. I bought this box set when it first came out because I'd actually thought about I really should be collecting David Bowie stuff now. And this just made it nice and easy for me, to be completely honest. So that's why I went for the box set. And as you'll see in the next 2 episodes, I have the next 2 box sets as well, which we will explore together. So that was my way of doing it the cheats way, I suppose, is being a completist that I am, to a point, getting the David Bowie albums that I wanted in one place with some extra bonuses as well. So the next album, for those of you that are in the know, would already know, Hunky Dory. Now, this is where it starts getting a little bit more serious for me. This is one of the great Bowie albums, as opposed to one of the Bowie albums. This particular presentation is reproduced on the nice shiny paper. What would you call it? Nice shiny cardboard. It's not a gatefold; it's a single cover. That's your back sleeve there. That's how it goes. I'll close up so you can have a look at the track listing. There you go. This was released in December 1971. Sorry I didn't time date the last one. The Man Who Sold the World came out in 1970. So we're on about an album a year sort of average at the moment. With this box set, I think this is probably the original inner sleeve, with all the lyrics there on. Now for me, obviously, the grab out on this one is Changes. I love Changes. It's great. A great track. Even though he did have a nasty stutter. Oh, You Pretty Thing. Life on Mars. I mean, come on. Life on Mars. It doesn't get much better than that. And Queen Bitch. They're the sort of standout tracks on this one. As I said, I'm not a huge Bowie fan. That's going to sound wrong. But you know what I mean. I'm not like with the Beatles. important part of my collection, but I don't obsess about it like I do things like Black Sabbath and Porcupine Tree and Metallica and stuff like that. But absolutely brilliant album. I don't know if this is actually on RCA per se, or they're just trying to reproduce the RCA label, but they're classic orange RCA. There we go. Brilliant album. This is when David Bowie really starts getting serious. June 1972, and probably the big one. That's a bit difficult to say about Bowie, isn't it? Ziggy, Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Again, produced by Ken Scott in association with David Bowie. One thing that really amuses me necessarily, I find really interesting, is a lot of people refer to the Spiders being as David Bowie's backing band, which is so insulting, because the Spiders were brilliant musicians in their own right, and probably would have or should have made it anyway, even without David Bowie lead singing, but that's another story for another day. Track listing on the back. Look, to be honest with you, I'm not even sure this is relevant, the track listing on this album, because it's not the sort of album you really listen to one track in isolation. I mean, Suffragette City was the one that got most of the airplay on radio, of course, and everyone would be familiar with it, but it's a concept album, and as such is designed to be listened to in its entirety in the track order that has been put down. That's one thing that really winds me up, the way people listen to music nowadays. Many things wind me up about today's music, let's be honest, but one of the facts is people drop in and out of albums, and the artist puts so much time into selecting the track order for a reason, especially in the especially with the concept album, because obviously concept albums are telling a story. And you don't really want to, you wouldn't read a book at random chapters, would you? So why would you listen to an album that way? Weirdos. Anyway, pulling the album out, it's got an RCA styly record not cover, you know what I mean, label. Proper inner sleeve here, reproduced, and all the lyrics on the back. The big clue to this box set is in fact the first track on this album. So I think maybe the makers of this box set were trying to be a little bit too clever and ignored the chronology. However, brilliant album. For me, I'm going to say it. Yeah, this is the David Bowie album for me. This is the one that rekindled my interest. And I have to say again, because I wasn't following Bowie closely at the time, it sort of slipped under the radar for me at the time. It's an album that I've come back to later in life. But what can I say? It's fantastic. Next in the box set is a different remix of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. There's nothing really any different on the cover. The inner sleeve is black rather than white. Black with white writing rather than white with black writing. Otherwise than that, it's pretty similar. It's actually a Ken Scott remix. Do you know what? I don't really notice a lot of difference. I don't know that there was any real value in putting that album in. I guess from a getting your money's worth perspective, it was worth it, but seems a little superfluous to me. But there you go, 2 copies of the one album. April 1973, David Bowie's 6th album is released. Now this album is an interesting landmark, more than the obvious reasons, in the fact that this was the first album David released in which he was now a star. So rather than trying to get to where he wanted to be, he'd achieved it, and that is reflected very much in this album, Aladdin Sane, or A Lad Insane, if you hadn't worked that out. I'm sure you had, whereby he is struggling with fame, which is again reflected obviously in the character of Ziggy Stardust. This is a brilliant album. This would be, for me, I don't know if I can do it that way out. There you go. It's not really working for me. Track listing on the back once again. Now this is one of those albums where you would know many of the tracks on here. Watch That Man, Panic in Detroit, Cracked Actor, Let's Spend the Night Together, Genie. See, it's a classic album. Really, this is part 2 of the previous album. So you get Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars and Aladdin Sane. Really are parts 1 and 2 of the same album. And I'm sure you all know the story that goes along with that. I'll pull out the inside for you. Oh, what else is in there? Oh, there's more goodies than I realised. Again, on the RCA copy style label, album lyric sheet on the inside, a few liner notes on other, and there we are. I believe that was from the fan club. What was this? You can join David's official fan club membership thing there with the signed thingy on the front there, which is rather a nice little thing to have. Brilliant album again, produced by Ken Scott. Mick Ronson played an enormous part on Stardust from Mars generally played an enormous part, and yeah, this is the other album you have to have. If you've got Ziggy Stardust, then you have to have Aladdin Sane as well. It's part 1 and 2. You can't really have one without the other. And another album which again I suggest, if you haven't listened to the album before, you listen to it in its entirety in order. Please listen to an album in order. The artist knows their music better than you do. Consider yourself told. Next we go to October 1973. The album is Pinups, and like many albums that unfortunately one comes across when one is a collector, this is more of a contractual obligation album, let's be honest. It's a album that contains 12 tracks, all of which influenced David Bowie when he was younger, or when he was forming as a musician. I think Mick Ronson's on this album. I think he helped involved with it. It's also the last collaboration with Ken Scott from a production perspective as well. The album cover was taken in Paris. It was originally intended for the cover of Vogue, so I read. And the lady down here, many Brits will know who that was. This is Twiggy. Twiggy, who was a supermodel in the 1960s, early 70s. Well, worldwide, obviously, but she's pretty well known in the UK. Track listing on the back. As you might see, you'd know some of the tracks on there. Did Dave do it better? Well, in some cases, yeah. In some cases, no. I don't like this album. It's a contractual obligation album. It screams it. But do you know what? A contractual obligation album by David Bowie is probably better than a contractual obligation album that I would make. And maybe even you. Who knows? Again, on a faux RCA label. What else do I have in here? Oh, there's also a little pamphlet as well, which is a little bit, well, just sleeve notes basically, and musicians that took part in the album are listed on here. Of particular interest to me was Ainsley Dunbar. I played with Whitesnake and Michael Shankar and a few other bands, well, many bands actually. He's quite prolific drummer, and obviously Mick Ronson, I've already said, were on here as well. So this is the last collaboration with anyone from Spiders of Mars. Last collaboration with Ken Stott. Not really the greatest way to go out. Probably should have left it at the last album. But again, if you're a completist, this is official canon. This is album number 7. This box set also comes with some live recordings from this period in David's life, and they are extremely good too. The first one here is David Bowie live at Santa Monica in 1972 with, of course, the Spiders from Mars. This album really comes at a time when they were hungry. They were really trying to get somewhere. Very, well, not raw in a bad sense, but they were very aggressive and raw, and the energy on stage was incredible. Really hear it on here. As far as the track listing is concerned, or a set list is concerned, I suppose is a better way of putting it. There we go. You can probably read that for yourself, so I don't have to insult you by reading it to you, because you're not 2 years old. And as far as the inside albums themselves are concerned, they are on. Now, I like this. This is why you buy special editions, because you give you little things. It's a double album. And on that record label, as you can see, there's Mick Ronson. I think it's Mick Ronson, or is it David? No, it's David, sorry. That's David playing an acoustic guitar, and standard label on the other side, and it's David on the other one. Sorry, first time I glanced at these and thought, oh, that looks like Mick Ronson, and then I didn't look at it again. So do your homework, children, do your homework. There's David again. So the labels are what's the word I'm looking for? Made to order. What I'm trying to say? You know what I mean. Anyway, it's a bootleg. So inside covers too are really, really nice. There we go. It's a really beautifully presented for a bootleg anyway. Really nicely presented. Then it did come an extremely expensive box set, so I'm glad they put a little bit of effort into it. See, I knew Mick was here somewhere. There he is. This is the other inner album sleeve. Really good recording. Really enjoy it. The energy, as I say, is absolutely fantastic. And whilst I'm sure it was available on bootleg and the various different versions of it, obviously the sound quality on this has been remastered properly, so it does sound good. Next in the box set we have the Ziggy Stardust and Stardust from Mars live, or the motion picture soundtrack as it's called. I've actually tried to find out when this was actually recorded and where, but I don't seem to be able to find out that detail. It doesn't need to be published anywhere. I'm sure it's somewhere, but I have not been able to find it. I'd love anyone to, if they do know, all the stuff downstairs, please talk to me. It's a bit lonely in this world otherwise, because I'm all on my lonesome over here. So track listing, there you go. This I know was taken more towards the end of their touring as the Spider's Mask, so I'm assuming it's sort of mid to late 73. Don't know for sure. Again, great album. What can I say? David and the Spiders at their peak, and they really knew their business. If this was, as I say, when I think it was, which was sort of mid to late 73, they certainly would have honed their skills by then. They would know every song inside out. So there wouldn't be probably not as much raw energy on this one as you got on the last one. Musically speaking, this is probably, well, it is more accomplished. Which one do you prefer? Yeah, depends on your musical taste. The albums themselves, bespoke, again, not really obvious it's obvious what it is, but not particularly clear to see. There you go. Yeah, same on there. It looks more like an AC/DC album, to be honest with you. The inner covers. Oh, yep. After all that looking, after everything I just said, guess what it says down there? There you go. That's when it was done, the 3rd of July 1973. That wasn't a bad guess, actually. Some would say I even know my shit. There you go. I don't do much homework. I don't do much research. I still seem to know my shit. Track listing is there. So there we go. That's the first one. And the part 2. Yep, 3rd of July 1973. There you go. I'll tell you what, all that research I had to do, all I had to do was look at the album cover. Who would have thought? There you go. So, one's in 1972, the other one's in late 73, so you're getting the band at the beginning and towards the end of the Aladdin Sane Ziggy Stardust period. Very different feel to both albums, but both brilliant. The final vinyl contribution to the box set is this. It's Recall 1. There are now 5 David Bowie box sets covering his entire career, and each one of them contains a Recall album, a single album or a double album, I think, in some cases. Funnily enough, I think they're named Recall 1 to 5, but I'm not sure. This one here, this is singles, short singles, B-sides, bits and pieces from this period, this 5-year period of David's career that may not have made it to an album in any other form. Track listing is there. Look, it's again, from a completist perspective, it's nice to have. There's some stuff on there which is quite interesting to listen to. Probably wouldn't have bought it in its own right, but I suppose that's why you get these box sets, isn't it? So you can be a bit of a completist. Interesting, they've got one on the RCA label and the other one on the whatever the other fake label was. I think it might have been Parlophone, actually. That could be fake Parlophone, that could be fake RCA, not too sure. And the inner covers, not that interesting either. You think they'd put a little bit more work into it. Blank there. So it just contains the chronology and recording times and stuff like that of the tracks that are on here. Again, nice to have from a completist point of view. Would I be buying it if it wasn't in part of the box set? Yeah, probably not. So finally, to round out this box set, what kind of box set would there be without a book inside? A coffee table book, as they like to call them. Like you're ever going to leave anything this valuable on your coffee table. If you're anything like me, it'll have coffee on it in seconds. So again, I can't go through the whole book, it's virtually impossible, but I'll try and flick through. That, to me, looks a little bit later than this period. Oh, So again, beautiful to own, really interesting to have a look through. That completes the box set. So what are my thoughts on this box set? Well, as I said, my reasons for buying it I've already outlined. The fact that I hadn't really collected any David Bowie albums, and I felt that I really should, because David is such an influential artist throughout music time, absolutely so influential. I mean, you can't even begin to put words to it. I don't like a lot of David Bowie stuff, and I know it's heresy to say so, but do you know what? As I said, this is my channel, this is my opinions. If you have a different opinion, you can either argue with me or do your own show. However, 3 of these albums, as I said, Hunky Dory, Aladdin, and Rise and Fall, are brilliant. They're actually classic albums, and I do strongly suggest, if you haven't listened to them for a long time, or if you've never listened to them, go back and do it. Listen to them again, but please do it in order. Listen to them in the order David put them together. That is the whole point. Now, I see on Discogs, and just from my general reading, that this box set is going for ridiculous money at the moment. I was quite fortunate. I actually pre-ordered it, so because when I saw it was coming out, I thought, oh, good opportunity. Now it's collecting huge money online. Look, if you're the sort of person that wants to have absolutely everything that David did, then of course you need to collect it. But really, do yourself a favour. I wouldn't be spending thousands as this box set is now collecting. I'd be collecting the 3 big albums that we've discussed on this in this box set, and if you can get Mo-Fi versions of them, all the better. I'd say that was a better use of your money. However, I'm very pleased I own it. It's a beautiful piece of work. I also own the next 2 pieces of David Bowie box set work as well, and we shall go into the second one of those in the next episode. So look, I hope you've enjoyed going through this box set with me. I would really appreciate if you could subscribe and support and like and whatever downstairs, but more importantly, feedback. I love to hear if you're enjoying what I'm doing, if you're not enjoying what I'm doing. I don't care, I just like to hear. And any suggestions of anything you might like me to go through that might be in my collection, or perhaps go through something else in more detail. Whatever you love, whatever you don't love, let me know. So in the meantime, thanks very much for joining me. Keep on rocking, stay grumpy. I'll see you all soon. Ciao.